Thanks for tuning in to Card Player TV. I'm Lizzie Harrison, and today I'm here with Bryan Devonshire. Thank you so much for coming by.
It's my pleasure, Lizzie.
So we were talking about concepts, what we're going to talk about in this interview, and you mentioned continuation betting. Now, what's going on with that? You're not doing it anymore?
No, I'm not, actually. I still continuation bet every once in a while, but not nearly as often, not nearly as 100% of the time as was the right thing to do, even as recently as a year ago.
And everybody continuation bets, it seems like. So why do you decide to pull away? Is it because of that?
Yeah, it's basically because of that reason. Like, poker is a constantly evolving game in the trends and in the styles that people play, and it's become so much to the point right now where it's accepted, like it's standard.
It
really,
is the norm.
where
Absolutely.
if you raise pre-flop and someone calls you out of position and they check to you, they are expecting you to bet. But the continuation bet, when you don't have anything, it's not a continuation bet, it's a bluff. And a continuation bet is just a word to describe betting when you're in position with a lead. Sometimes you have something, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
But because everyone knows that a continuation bet is coming 100% of the time, they know that therefore, most of the time it's a bluff.
Yeah.
It's not a bet for value, it's a bet as a bluff because you usually miss the flop just as often as they don't miss the flop. And so since people are learning at such a fast rate with the internet and with how many hands are playing and how much information is out there, everyone knows which flops you're supposed to hit and which flops you're not supposed to hit.
Right.
And think about every time that you have the ace-queen and you raise and it comes 10, 8, 5 and you bet and they check raise you and you're like, gotta fold my hand now.
So when did you come to this realization, and how did you come to this realization?
Well, after about 5 times of getting my ass check raised on dry boards that I missed. And I felt like I was just lighting money on fire that I didn't need to. And I also felt like from all the times that you see people bluff, and it's everyone's really bluff happy these days, and we all know that we're doing it. And so it's value to not bluff when people know you're going to bluff.
So if you do make a raise pre-flop, you miss the flop, and are you just going to check behind and basically give up on the pot?
No. That's where we start getting into the textures of the boards and the hand values. I play my hands much more from a value perspective than I do from a deception perspective. In general, like bubble play, for example, and I'm playing every single hand, because they're folding. But when they're not folding, when you raise and they call and they check to you and you bet and they don't fold, like it's just the ebb and the flow of the tournament. When they're not folding, that's when I'm not betting the spots that it's pretty obvious that I missed.
So how are you handling it when you make a raise pre-flop and you do hit the flop? Are you going to put the continuation bet in then, or
Yes, because everyone thinks
it's a bluff.
Everyone thinks you're continuation betting.
So what do you consider before you decide whether or not you're going to make this bet on the flop?
My opponent first. If my opponent is unaware of the continuation bet, or
like a really passive player,
or is aware of it but just doesn't care. There's plenty of players that are like, okay, I have the Jack 9 offsuit, and this, I guess I should see a flop, and it comes Ace 8-4.
They have no interest.
Right.
So against those players, it will still work?
Right. And also the Ace 8-4 flop, for example. It's so hard for them to hit that flop. Even if they do hit the flop with like an Ace 9 or something, it's really hard to play out of position. So I'm going to fire that flop almost every single time. But definitely it's player dependent first. If the player's folding too much, then I'm going to continuation bet every single time. But if the player's aware that I'm continuation betting, then I'll just check it behind. I'll check my ace high behind because it has showdown value, because I can get there and win the pot at showdown. I have position. I'll control the pot, and just I think I started with better cards. I happen to miss the flop, but you probably missed the flop too, so
why give them an opportunity to drive you out of the pot?
Exactly.
So let's talk tournament play. Say you're the chip leader chip leader at your table in a tournament. At that point, is there value in continuation betting because everyone else might be a little bit afraid of you?
Depends on the situation in the tournament. Bubble play, obviously. Near big pay jumps, definitely. Like I remember the bubble in Reno. Everyone at my table besides Jason Potter was a local amateur player. So the bubble was really important to them. So
that made it easy for you and Jason.
Yeah, by the time the bubble broke, we had every single black chip on the table besides 9 of them. But in other situations, like midway through the tournament where we're not close to the money and I have all the chips, I actually play a lot tighter than people think I would, because they see me as a chip leader. They see me as under a young internet kid, if you will, and they're going to put me on continuation betting. They're going to put me on playing a lot of hands, and so they're going to play back at me a lot, especially when you start getting an antes in play and people just want to re-raise pre-flop and get it all in. You know, like, not only do I tighten up my continuation bet range, but like I actually tighten up my raising range when stacks are getting to that point where they're just going to ship it on you.
Because you don't want to, I mean, if you have the chip stack, your goal is to maintain it at that point in the tournament and slowly build it up.
Yeah, and there are great times to put pressure onto players, and you can accumulate so many chips using those spots, but I've seen many chip leaders bleed off stacks because they try to put too much pressure. They feel like, oh, I've got this many chips, you know, I can just pound away at every single pot.
So what's the balance?
The balance is the timing, is the situation of when players are apt to be playing back at you and when they're not. You can get that just by feel. I mean, if it doesn't work twice is kind of when I just flip it off. I'm like, all right, it's not going to work right now. That's fine. You know, and so you go into the other way. You get value with your hands. If they don't believe you, then get a hand and let them not believe you.
That makes a lot of sense, Bryan. Thanks so much for coming by to explain
Absolutely,
it to me.
Lizzie.
I'm Lizzie Harrison with Bryan Devonshire for Card Player TV.